The coffee pot was sitting beneath a folding table, half hidden behind a stack of chipped dinner plates, when the black star caught my eye. The woman running the estate sale had placed a $3 sticker on it. To her, it was simply an outdated white percolator that no one had used in decades. But the bold atomic design on its side told a different story. It belonged to a much smaller and more collectible corner of the CorningWare world, where the right pattern, shape, marking, and condition can turn forgotten kitchenware into something collectors actively search for. That does not mean every old casserole dish is worth thousands. Most are not. But before you donate the white dish at the back of your cabinet, there are several details you need to check, because the difference between a common $20 piece and a scarce collectible can be surprisingly small. My name is Ruth Calder. I am 68 years old, and for almost 30 years I helped families identify and sell household collections across Western Pennsylvania. I have worked in farmhouse kitchens, antique shops, church basements, crowded garages, and estate sale dining rooms where every cabinet was filled with cookware from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. These days, I examine pieces in a small appraisal room behind my home. The shelves hold old pattern guides, sales records, catalogs, glass lids, detachable handles, and examples of cookware that once seemed too ordinary to save. The question I hear most often is, could my CorningWare really be worth $25,000? The honest answer is that a seller once listed a vintage CorningWare piece online for around $25,000, and the listing spread everywhere. People began opening cabinets, searching thrift stores, and treating ordinary casserole dishes like hidden treasure. But an asking price is not the same as a completed sale. Anyone can place an enormous price on an online listing. What matters is what a buyer actually paid. Most vintage CorningWare sells for modest amounts. Common dishes may bring $10, $20, or $40. The real interest is concentrated in limited patterns, unusual forms, early versions, complete sets, and pieces that survived in excellent condition. So begin by bringing every older CorningWare piece into good light. Look for the familiar white glass ceramic body with a printed pattern along the side. Place each piece on a towel, remove the lid carefully, and turn the dish over. The base may reveal the CorningWare name, a model number, manufacturing information, and other clues. Markings changed over the years, so no single word or logo proves everything. You need to consider the pattern, the shape, the handles, the material, and the condition together. The first pattern to check is the one almost every family recognizes. Blue Cornflower was introduced in 1958 and became the signature CorningWare design. It usually shows 3 simple blue flowers on a clean white background. Because it remained in production for decades, it is extremely common. A standard blue cornflower casserole often sells for roughly $10 to $40, depending on size, condition, and whether the correct lid is included. That may sound disappointing, but the oldest versions deserve more attention. Early blue cornflower pieces often had smaller handles. Over time, the handle design became larger. Older base markings may also differ from later production. An early example with small handles, a clean marking, and the original lid can be more desirable than the common versions most people know. I once helped a family sort an entire cabinet of blue cornflower cookware after their mother moved out of her farmhouse. They believed every piece was identical. Most were later casseroles with ordinary market value, but one had smaller early handles, an older marking, and its original lid. It was not worth a fortune, but it was clearly the best piece in the group. That is the first lesson. A common pattern can still contain a better version. The next design is one many people discard because it looks so deeply rooted in the 1970s. Nature's Bounty was produced around 1971 and features vegetables, mushrooms, tomatoes, corn, and other harvest imagery in mustard yellow, orange, brown, and green. It has the sort of design that younger family members often call ugly before placing it in a donation box. A common Nature's Bounty loaf pan or small casserole may sell for only $15 or $20. The important detail is that the pattern had a limited production period. Scarcer shapes, coordinated pieces, and complete sets can attract more interest. Condition matters especially with this design. Many examples were heavily used, stained, faded, or scratched. A piece with bright decoration, a clean interior, no chips, and the correct lid is far more appealing than one that spent 40 years inside a busy kitchen. Limited production does not automatically create a jackpot. It simply gives collectors fewer surviving pieces to choose from. The next pattern is easier to recognize because of the two birds. Country Festival, commonly called Friendship by collectors, was introduced around 1975. It shows two bluebirds facing one another with a colorful folk-style tulip between them. Depending on the form and condition, friendship pieces may sell from around $50 into the low hundreds. Larger examples and complete sets with lids can sometimes approach $300, while damaged or incomplete pieces usually bring less. A retired teacher once brought me one of these casseroles wrapped in a towel. She had used it for holiday meals for more than 30 years. The decoration remained vivid, the original lid was still present, and the interior showed only light wear. She had almost donated it because she thought the birds looked old-fashioned. But old-fashioned is often exactly what collectors want. A design that once seemed unfashionable can become desirable because fewer families bothered to preserve it. Now look for a softer floral design known as Floral Bouquet. This pattern was produced for a relatively short period, generally associated with the early to mid-1970s. Instead of the simple blue cornflower stems, it carries a more delicate spray of flowers across the white body. Floral Bouquet is what collectors sometimes call a sleeper. It does not always look unusual enough to attract attention, yet its shorter production period means certain pieces can be harder to find. A standard casserole may not be extremely valuable, but unusual shapes, large sizes, and complete sets can sell for considerably more than an isolated common piece. The real mistake is comparing only the pattern. Suppose two dishes both carry Floral Bouquet. One is a small casserole with no lid. The other is a less common form with the correct cover, clean decoration, and an original cradle. They are not equal simply because the flowers match. Form and completeness can matter as much as the decoration itself. That becomes even more important with the next pattern, Renaissance. The CorningWare version of Renaissance features an ornate blue and purple floral design. It was produced for only about 2 years, an extremely short run compared with Blue Cornflower's decades of production. Depending on the piece, Renaissance examples may sell from roughly $50 to $200. Larger casseroles and complete sets tend to sit at the higher end, especially when the decoration remains strong and the correct lid is present. But there is a trap. Pyrex also used the name Renaissance for a different pattern. Sellers sometimes confuse the two and compare prices for the wrong product. Always turn the piece over and confirm the maker. Make sure you are researching CorningWare rather than a similarly named Pyrex design. The name alone is not enough. This is one reason base markings matter so much. A quick online search can create confidence without accuracy. A seller sees one familiar word, finds the highest price, and assumes the objects are identical. They may not even come from the same company. The next pattern is where prices can become more serious. Wildflower features bold orange and yellow flowers on a white background. It was produced in limited quantities during the early 1970s and has become one of the more sought-after CorningWare designs. Large casseroles, especially those around 3 quarts or larger with their matching lids, may sell in the $200 to $500 range when condition and demand are strong. Smaller saucepans and petite pieces may sell for less, often around $100 to $200. Complete sets in excellent condition can sometimes move beyond $500. Those figures are not guarantees. Markets change, and one unusually high sale does not establish the value of every piece. You must compare the exact form you own. A large covered casserole is not the same as a small saucepan. A complete set is not the same as one loose dish. A bright, clean example is not equal to one with chips, fading, or a replacement lid. A woman from Ohio once contacted me after discovering 3 wildflower pieces in her aunt's pantry. One was complete. One had a lid from another model. The third had a chip near the handle. She had found a high online price for a pristine set and assumed all 3 dishes were worth the same amount. They were not. The complete piece deserved the strongest comparison. The mismatched one had to be valued as incomplete. The damaged example required a major discount. The pattern created interest, but condition decided how much of that interest survived. Now we return to the object I found beneath that estate sale table. Black Starburst, also called Atomic Star, is associated with vintage CorningWare percolators rather than ordinary casseroles. Its bold black starburst design captures the space-age style of the 1950s and early 1960s. Because it appeared on a limited product form, surviving examples are much scarcer than common baking dishes. They also appeal to two collecting groups: CorningWare collectors and buyers who love mid-century modern design. Individual pieces can sell for several $100s. Complete and exceptional percolator sets may approach or exceed $1,000, depending on the model, condition, included parts, and recent demand. But before you try to use one, there is an important safety warning. Certain vintage CorningWare percolators were recalled because components could separate and create a burn hazard. An old coffee pot should be identified and researched before anyone attempts to heat or operate it. Collectors often purchase these pieces for display. Do not place one on a stove or plug it in merely because it looks complete. Safety matters more than resale value. Now let us examine the material itself, because modern lookalikes can fool almost anyone. Traditional CorningWare was made from a glass ceramic material known as Pyroceram. It was designed to tolerate major temperature changes when used correctly, and became one of the company's most important features. After the consumer products business changed ownership in the late 1990s, many later CorningWare products were made from ceramic or stoneware materials rather than the classic pyroceram associated with older pieces. The newer products can look similar from a distance. One preliminary test is to hold the dish against a bright light. Some pyroceram pieces show a faint translucency around thinner areas. Ordinary stoneware usually remains completely opaque. Pyroceram also tends to feel smoother and more glass-like. But do not rely on the light test alone. Thickness, dirt, color, and lighting can create misleading results. Use the marking, model number, country of manufacture, design history, and material characteristics together. This is also the moment to inspect every piece for damage. Look for chips along the rim, cracks around the handles, rough spots on the lid, fading in the decoration, deep scratches, and signs of overheating or misuse. Never drag your bare finger across a chipped glass edge. Examine it closely under bright light instead. Damage can reduce market value significantly, and a compromised piece may not be safe for cooking. Now we come to the pattern that caused the greatest online excitement. Spice of Life appeared in the early 1970s and shows herbs, mushrooms, garlic, celery, vegetables, and small French words. One of the best-known inscriptions is l'échalote, referring to shallots. Many American families owned it, which means the pattern itself is not automatically rare. A Spice of Life piece was famously listed online for around $25,000. That listing spread across the internet and convinced millions of people that an ordinary casserole might pay for a car. The truth is less dramatic. Most common Spice of Life dishes sell for modest amounts, often around $20 to $50 depending on the form and condition. Scarcer sizes, unusual model numbers, large covered pieces, browning skillets, petite pans, saucepans, detachable handles, and complete pristine sets may bring far more. Some exceptional sales have reportedly reached much higher amounts, but any four-figure claim should be verified through genuine completed transactions. Do not judge your piece by the most expensive advertisement you can find. Search for the exact model number, match the size, match the shape, match the lid, compare condition. Then look at completed sales rather than active listings. I once helped 3 sisters sort their mother's kitchen after she passed away. They had seen the $25,000 story and were afraid to touch her Spice of Life casserole. When we examined it, we found a common size, visible wear, and a lid from another model. It still had collector interest, but it was not a financial windfall. The oldest sister kept it because their mother had served Christmas dinner from it every year. That piece may have been worth only a modest amount on the market, but its family value was impossible to replace. There is one final pattern that many people overlook because they confuse it with blue cornflower. Blue heather features delicate pale blue flowers with soft gray leaves. It was produced for only a very short period, often described as roughly 1 year, making it one of the harder CorningWare patterns to find. The design is softer and more botanical than blue cornflower. The gray foliage is an especially useful clue. If you find an older CorningWare dish decorated with pale blue blossoms and gray leaves, do not assume it is the common pattern. Turn it over, record the marking, photograph it clearly, and compare it with reliable references. Do not use abrasive cleaner, do not stack heavy pans on top of it, and do not place it in a yard sale before identifying the exact form. Now here's the practical method I use whenever a family brings me a piece. First, identify the decoration carefully. Look at the colors, flowers, birds, vegetables, lettering, and arrangement. Second, turn the piece over and record every marking and model number. Third, determine the material and approximate production period. Use the base, physical characteristics, and reputable references together. Fourth, identify the exact form. A casserole, skillet, saucepan, petite pan, roaster, and percolator can have very different levels of scarcity. Fifth, check for original parts. Correct lids, detachable handles, cradles, trivets, cords, instructions, and boxes can increase value. Sixth, inspect the condition honestly. Chips, cracks, stains, faded decoration, mismatched parts, and deep scratches all matter. Seventh, search sold listings for the exact pattern and model. Ignore huge prices that have never attracted a buyer. Eighth, compare several completed sales rather than relying on one unusual result. And finally, seek help from a knowledgeable collector, reputable auction house, or qualified appraiser when the piece appears genuinely rare, the markings conflict, or the collection is large enough that a mistake could be expensive. Most viewers who check their cabinets will not discover a $25,000 casserole. They may find a useful vintage piece worth $20 or $40. Some will uncover an early version, unusual form, or complete set worth a few hundred. A very small number may find a scarce pattern that collectors have struggled to locate. The goal is not to turn every old dish into a fantasy. The goal is to recognize what you have before it disappears into a donation box. So start with the oldest piece in your kitchen. Place it on a towel, turn it over, read the base, check the handles, match the lid, hold it near a strong light, inspect the condition, and compare it only with verified sales of the same model. Avoid aggressive cleaning, unrealistic listing prices, unsafe use of recalled appliances, and the assumption that every white casserole is identical. The dish at the back of your cabinet may be ordinary, it may be collectible, or it may hold more family history than any buyer could ever pay for. Which CorningWare pattern do you remember from your childhood kitchen? Subscribe for more practical guides to overlooked household collectibles, because in the next video, we will examine the vintage Pyrex patterns people regularly sell for a few dollars without realizing collectors are searching for them.